Hello, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to do a instructional video on what I do to bait fish when I bait fish. A few people have requested some information, so I'm just going to go through what I like to use and do. We'll start with my tackle box. My tackle bag is actually the result of years of realizing I don't need so much. I don't need the huge tackle boxes and bags of the past that I used to carry around with everything in it. I just realized one day that I really don't need it all. So I kind of went through and I actually separated things out to where I have my bag I take with me, and then I have a little fanny pack for river fishing, and then I keep all my extraneous gear, perhaps for boating, etc., in the big boxes to pull out as I need it, because it's just too much to pack around and I don't need most of it all the time. So I kind of try to take with me what I'm going to need for where I'm going. Now in my tackle bag I keep a rag, because when you're using bait your hands get dirty all the time, smelly, and it's hard to hold the fishing pole, and you're holding fish and whatever, and you get dirty. I just put a grommet through a rag and click it onto my side, and it's good to go, so I can wipe my hands in a hurry and not have to look for a rag, which is really nice. I also have pole holders that I like, that you stick in the ground and put your fishing pole in. I prefer to put them in pretty vertical, so the pole is kind of straight up, so that you can see if something's going on at the tip, rather than like most anglers kind of give it an angle. I prefer to see as high as I can while I'm sitting in a chair. That kind of helps me to not miss fish. These particular pole holders I got from Sportsman's years ago, and I have never seen them since and been able to find any like them. I really prefer them because they're compact, lightweight, and they just go in my little bag here, and they're always with me. I don't forget them. I've learned that if you don't put stuff in here, you'll forget it. So I try to take everything with me compartmentalized in a bag, so I can just go when the time comes without forgetting things. Now, if you can't find some, you can also make them yourself. Just a piece of rebar and a piece of pipe and a little welding, and you can get creative and make some good pole holders. You can also order flag pole holders that actually fit a fishing pole perfectly. And they're really heavy duty, good for deep sand. They are very heavy, a little pricey, but they are very nice. Now when it comes to bait fishing, the beauty of bait fishing perhaps is that you don't need a sensitive, expensive rod, because you're just letting the fish take the bait. In fact, a rod with more give to it actually keeps the fish from detecting your presence a little bit better. What that means is you can go down to wherever, Cabela's, and get you a whooping stick for 20 bucks, and the noodly thing is just great for bait fishing, and they're cheap. The other thing I like to use is what's called a bait runner reel, and I like a spin caster bait runner reel, which are kind of getting hard to find. But the reason I like them is they have a feature right here where you can flick the switch to turn it into a bait spinning reel, a bait caster reel, excuse me, a bait runner reel, that's the word I'm after, and it lets the fish take the line and run with it, and when you reel, engages. So the fish, if you were to normally pull on the line, it would say, well, there's something there, and it'll let go of the bait. But if you open up the bait runner feature, the fish can keep going. And the beauty of this is, rather than opening the bail, what you end up getting is a mess. But the bait runner feature keeps a little bit of tension on the line, so when the fish is running, it doesn't give you a mess, which is really nice. And because there's a little tension on the line, it activates the tip a little bit when they pull, so you can see they're there before they feel that you are there. And that helps you catch fish that are extremely picky. Another thing I like to use is a piece of duct tape on the end of the fishing poles. And the reason I do that, well, there's two reasons actually. First of all, you can see it when the fish starts to tap on it just a little bit. It really stands out when you're far away. And additionally, if you have several poles out there with a group, and one of them's getting bit and everybody's yelling, fish, fish, if you just yell the color, then they know which pole's getting the fish. And you just go down and get some duct tape of different colors. They even have those colors for people who need to express themselves. They got all the colors you could find Home Depot or online for cheap. And that piece of tape saves you a lot of headaches. Always put it on to the back of the tip of the pole. You don't want it messing with the line or getting tangled. You gotta be careful with that. Now, as for line, I use 6-pound test when I fish for trout, generally. And I use a type of line called nanofill, which is getting harder to find in the 6-pound. Now, when you put this line on, it is incredibly thin. So you do have to put backing on. And I say more than half of the spool needs to be backing. The backing I use, you could use a braid or whatever. I just use strand 6-pound monofilament. Remember, friends don't let friends use trilene. Anyway, this this line, you'll want to put not quite to the edge of the spool. If you go to a shop and they put your line on for you and they fill your spool completely full, go to another shop. If you get your spool completely filled, what ends up happening is when you cast it, it all comes off and makes a rat's nest and you have trouble. So don't go quite to the edge. You do want to, you know, come out a ways. You want backing on it to space it out near the edge, because the closer to the edge your line is, the less friction and the further you'll be able to cast. Now, the reason that I use this nanofill is because it casts further than any other line I've ever used in my life. Now, this line is a little tricky. It does not like rocks, and for that reason, abrasions will break it over time pretty quickly. The reason that I use it with this is a swivel. I put a swivel on here and keep it on here all the time. And then I have leaders made from the 6-pound strand mono that really stands up to abrasion well. And that's what I put on the end of it so the rocks don't eat it up. Nevertheless, after each fishing trip, I usually take off about 10 or 15 feet of line and start anew so that I don't have break off. But this line is incredibly tough if it's not on rocks. So it's kind of a tricky thing to use. But the reason I like it is because I can cast twice as far with it. And when you're bait casting, sometimes you've got to get way out there. And this line does that better than any other line I've ever used. Now, when I put the line on, I have this Snell. They're called Snell holders. Plano makes them. These are the coolest things. You can put your rigs on them. It's a simple matter of wrapping them on. You see, you just stick them onto one of the holes, you wrap them around, and then when you get to the end, you just give it a couple wraps and you're done. It stays in place, ready to go, ready to fish. And the way that I rig these is I have a swivel on the end, and that is what I click onto this swivel here, and I'm ready to fish. And the way these are made, I use the 6-pound strand monofilament. I use a barrel swivel, about, I want to say 16 inches of line. Then I use a barrel sinker. Now, the reason that I use a barrel sinker is so that it can move between two swivels. And this other swivel I put here, barrel swivel, and then I give myself, probably 24 inches of line, maybe about 2 feet or so, to the hook. The hook I use is a treble hook, and it's either a size 16 or 14, either one works well, but it's very small. And the reason that I like it very small is, well, there's several reasons. First of all, a smaller hook requires less bait. A smaller hook does not damage the fish as much. They have a much higher survivability rate if you're releasing them, and they do a great job. The fish don't notice them like they would a bigger hook, so they take the bait better. Now, something that people really don't know is that floating baits, like I use here, power bait, will actually sink if your hook's too big, and you may have to even put more bait on it to float it. So check your hook, put the bait on it, don't use more than you need, and try and see if it floats before you cast it out. Now, the less bait you use, of course, the better, because bait's expensive. So these also help economically. I like these little hooks. One thing I should probably mention, the knot that I use to tie all these knots, I use an improved clinch knot is what it's called. And I use 8 wraps. I'm not going to try and show you how to do that because I'm not an expert, but just get on the internet or an app, look for an improved clinch knot, and that's the knot with 8 wraps that is as strong as any line. And I have the best luck with that knot over any other knot I've ever used. Now, I should mention my favorite toy, this little hook remover here. It has an end for large hooks and an end for small hooks. I only use the small end, of course. If you were to go bigger than a size 16 hook, this would not work. And so I like to go 16 or smaller, 16 or 14, and use this. The way this operates is you put the line through the groove here, down the fish to the hook, and remove it. You do have to keep the line taut and the fish firmly held in order to use this, but it removes the hook without harming the fish almost all the time. It's a fantastic little tool. The way it works is when it gets to the hook is tightly put against the surface here in the grooves, and then you can push it back into the fish a little, and when you pull it out, it doesn't rehook the fish because it's firmly pushed against the end here. As long as you keep it tight like that, you can get it out pretty easily. I have a little creation here I'm experimenting with. I put it on a little lanyard so I can click it to my side and have it ready to go a lot easier than trying to find it or get it out of my pockets. We'll see how that goes. Now the last thing I should probably cover is my power bait. I don't use straight power bait. I have a special mix that I create. And the way that it's made is you get 2 cans of peach salmon egg bait. It doesn't have to have sparkles or not. You shouldn't. I just don't think it matters either way. But it does have to be peach salmon egg. 2 cans of that. 1 can of garlic. I prefer the yellow garlic over just plain garlic. Just the yellow garlic just seems to be better. And then you just take a jar of any regular power bait. And the way this is done is you take a can of this and a half a can of this, jar of these, and you mix this half with this can and this half with this one, and then you mix those with whatever color you want of regular power bait, and it has to be regular power bait. No gulp, no scent, no super whatever, no anything else, just regular power bait. What this does is the garlic salmon egg together have oils in them, and they keep the bait softer even in cold conditions. When you're fishing, especially in a cold day or the winter, even ice fishing, a frozen ball of bait is hard to hook a fish with. But this stuff, when you get it mixed, no matter what you mix it with for coloration, it just stays incredibly soft. And that lets you hook the fish so much easier. It also dissolves much more quickly, which brings the bait or the fish in better from further distances, but it also means you have to pay attention about every 30-40 minutes, and you have to check your bait, make sure it's not dissolved and gone. Now you can make any color you want, doesn't matter, because your final jar is a coloration. That's why you're using it. But as long as you use that mix, it will always be soft, and the fish just seem to take it better than other power bait. I was astounded at the difference, absolutely astounded. So one other thing you should know, if you're fishing with power bait for ice fishing, it's ideal to have the bait sink rather than float off the bottom, because you're just dropping it down from the top. They don't sell sinking power bait. They used to, but it all sold out because they felt it was defective. Well, I bought every can I could get my hands on, and now they're gone. So what I do is I actually will mix enough glitter with anything, and if you overdo the glitter, it gives enough weight to the bait that it will sink. You just have to kind of add more glitter than you would think. So that's a trick you can use for ice fishing. One last thing I'm going to mention with power bait, you may not know, you can let it dry out as hard as a rock and leave the lid off, and it'll be hard as a rock. All you have to do is just add a tiny bit of water, put the lid on, and leave it for a day, and it'll refresh it as if it was brand new. So don't ever worry about that. Don't ever throw your power bait away. If it gets hard or older, just add a little water to it, shut the lid. It will rehydrate. It's incredible. So don't throw your bait away. If you have any other questions or comments, please go ahead and let me know, and I'll be happy to answer them. But I just wanted to put this out there for people that had some questions on what I do. Thank you, and tight lines.